Hey everyone, and welcome to La Roche FM, a podcast where design and business meet in the same place. Weekly talks with industry experts on how they do it. Let's begin the show. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Joe Stewart. Hello, Joey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Just waking up on this rainy Portland morning, getting ready to start my day. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Joe Stewart. I'm a designer and I'm a co-founder of Work&Co, which is a digital product agency.
How did you decide to become a designer? What was your, people have different paths in life, and somebody just go to art schools, somebody just get passionate about designing stuff. What was your path? How did you get into design?
I am very lucky into how I came into design. It actually came through my father. So my dad actually had two careers in his lifetime. In his earlier career, he was a musician and a record producer. And actually, my brother is now a musician, so he kind of followed that footsteps. And then later in his career, he became a software engineer, creating software for music, and then later created software for Adobe. So he worked on Photoshop and Premiere and those kinds of things. So when I was in high school, Photoshop was just lying around basically, and he said, maybe you should check this out, you might be interested in it. So really it came through him. So when I was 16, 17, 18, I was just kind of goofing around, and then when I was 19, I got my first internship at a web design agency, and I'm 40 now, so 20 years later, it's just been the same thing ever since. So thanks to him.
Did you work mostly like in design agencies, or you also worked like as an in-house designer for different companies?
I've only ever worked at agencies, so from the late 90s on. So it's been a pretty straight trajectory. It's been interesting to watch attitudes change over if it's better to work at an agency or better to work in-house, and the pendulum is in people's minds has shifted back and forth a few times now. So it's funny to see. I guess I don't know what the best answer is since I've only worked on the agency side, but at this point in my career, I actually really like the variety of being able to work on an agency. And then there's this other really lovely benefit, which is you never work on something long enough to get caught up in the politics of things. So that's really lovely as well.
Yeah. I think that's the reason why some people even choose to go from design agency to in-house. I mean, they just want something more stable and just work on one product constantly.
Yeah, there's certainly a benefit to that. I mean, I think the biggest downside of most, not most, but a lot of the projects you work on at an agency is you'll usually work on one big push of something, one big launch of something, and then you'll work on training the in-house team or working with them to develop it together, and then you kind of have to let it go. Whereas if you're working in-house, you can really work on version 1.1 through 1.99, which is really lovely. So there's obviously advantages both ways. The grass is probably always greener depending where you are. One nice thing about where we're landing at with Work&Co is a lot of our clients end up retaining us for a long time to continue working on their product. So I know we're going to talk about the Virgin America website for a little bit, but we've actually been working on that for 4 straight years, which has been nice to being able to implement incremental changes along the way, which is unusual for an agency. But it's been sort of the best of both worlds in that case.
So you're like the remote in-house designers.
Well, we're their partners. I mean, they have a design team, they have an engineering team, and we augment that team. And we've really tried to set up a relationship where it feels like a unified team. We try to remove the sort of typical client agency barriers, remove the formality, and just be able to talk really honestly, as if we're all working at the same place. So it's become very efficient in that way and friendly, and I'm buddies with all those guys, and it's nice at this point.
I think you're one of the co-founding partners of Work&Co, right?
That's correct, yeah.
How were the early days of the company? How did you come up, all of you, and just found it Work&Co?
Sure. So, about 5 years ago now, there are five of us. There are five co-founders of Work and Co. And we were all working together, and we had been working together for many years. So, like 6, 7 years, we've been working together. So we all knew each other really well, and we all were interested in one pretty specific part of digital, which is digital product. Um, and we sort of all at the same time had the epiphany that in order to do digital product really well, we needed to start a company that's solely focused on it for a couple of reasons. One is you need a really special kind of process to do product efficiently on the agency side, and you also need to staff pretty differently than a full service agency needs to. So, in order for us to do the best product work, the conclusion that we came to was we actually had to kind of start over. So, we all decided to start Work and Co. Really just focus on one thing, the thing that we really care about the most, be able to hire in a really specific way, and to be able to set up a bespoke process that really is tailored just for product development. And it's been an experiment, really, but the first 5 years have been um, had really good signs that the experiment's working. So hopefully that'll continue.
Why I was asking is because also I think recently, I think it was in 2017 or something, uh, Fast and Company named you one of my most innovative companies in their design list. Why is that?
Well, you'll have to ask the guys at Fast Company for more details. But if I were to guess, I think that what's innovative about Working Co as an agency is most agencies aren't really set up to launch products. That's really where the in-house world has a major advantage over most agencies. But we've from the beginning set up our business model predicated on launching products that live in the world. We're not really that keen on doing concept work that will just sort of be shelved, or doing just strategy or just development or just design. What our model is set up to do is to have both the business and strategic insights of what digital means to a company and to its customers at the beginning, and then to be able to take it through the entire process, through product strategy, through design, through development, through launch, and through iteration, to be able to launch those ideas. And not very many companies are set up to be able to both have the strategic insight and have the ability to execute at the level that I think we're able to execute at. And I think that is probably like where the innovation lies, is just because it's so narrowly focused on one really specific thing, which is launching products. We're able to do something that a lot of agencies aren't focused on, and that's fine. That's great. It's a different business model, but I think for us, it's about launching products that really move the needle for businesses, and uh, it's kind of a new idea, honestly. So I think that's where the innovation is.
hmm So I think that's why also the reason why you don't showcase so much work on your website. I mean, the only work you have is Virgin America, and then you have constantly, I mean, the leadership, and then you have your principles of the company and so on. I mean, that's the reason, right?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Is a lot of what we do are not allowed to talk about, which is a bummer from a PR side. If you ever get to do a credibilities meeting with us, if we come in to pitch for you, usually people are very surprised to hear the amount of stuff we actually do. But there's so much we're not allowed to talk about, and I think when people come to work here too, they're surprised to sort of see behind the curtain a little bit. But we work with all the big tech companies. That's where like the majority of our work goes, and we can't really talk about that stuff. We work with lots of e-commerce clients, lots of finance clients, And a lot of those guys want to keep things a little bit hush hush. I think people are aware of some of our work, sort of tangentially, but yeah, a lot of it's kind of under wraps. And there's a gift and a curse to that. But I think we'll be able to talk about more of our work coming up. And then there's this also other practical side of being at a digital agency, which is always like your own website is at the bottom of the list of stuff that you're working on. So there certainly are things that we could be more public about, but all of us are so focused on our individual clients and individual projects. The way the company is set up is partner based. There's no head of design, there's no CEO, there's no head of tech. There's just a series of very senior people who are all focused on their clients. So I have 2 clients right now, and I'm really focused on that. And while I know, yeah, we need to update our website, to be honest with you, I'd much rather work on my clients' projects because they're way more interesting. So it's sort of both. There's some we can't talk about, and some it's hard to work on your own website sometimes. So it's a little bit of both.
I get it. You touched the point of team structures. So you mentioned, of course, I've seen even on the website, each partner is involved in every client work, right?
Every client has a partner on it. So yeah, so the staffing model was something that we were very interested in from the beginning when we founded the company. So the traditional agency model, at least in our experience, was sort of there's if you're a really senior person, like if you're an executive creative director or something like that, how it would normally work, at least in our experiences, you would be 10% allocated on 10 projects. And each of those 10 projects would have 10 more junior designers on it. And that's a really great way to bill clients, but it's a really shitty way to make anything good. So what we wanted to do was be extremely focused and extremely hands-on. So each partner is usually on 1 or 2 projects, and then the teams under them are very small and very senior. So just on the design side, a typical project will have a partner on it and maybe 2, maybe 3 designers, but usually 2 designers, and they're a little bit more senior designers. And that's the team that's on it for the entire run of the project. So be it a year or be it 2 years, you're on it the whole time. And the reason to do that is the output is better. There's way less knowledge transfer that's getting lost. You get way more comfortable with the client, way more comfortable with the team, so there's operational efficiencies there. You do grow slower as a company that way, but we're not trying to be the biggest. We're trying to be the best. And that's a long, slow burn. Like that's going to take us 40 years to get there. But that's the mindset we're in. We're not trying to get big quick. We've done a lot of very slow, very deliberate growth. But I think the agencies that we most admire have been medium in size and have focused on quality of output versus mass of output. And I think we're all really, really comfortable in that, and we're shooting for that. And I don't think that many places are shooting for that. So I think it's relieving to the business world to see an agency that's going out for a small number of really high quality products versus a huge number of okay things.
That's actually a really interesting mindset because, I mean, you see nowadays every company is obsessed with growth. I mean, everybody wants to grow fast, make more revenue, hire more staff, and this kind of stuff. And I mean, everybody wants to build the biggest building, and nobody wants to build like the best building in town. And that's a really interesting mindset, actually.
Yeah, there's something about. I feel like this is a newer feeling too, and especially with younger people, like
Nobody's patient.
yeah, that's a great way to phrase it. Nobody's patient, and everybody just wants to be a billionaire tomorrow. And there's nothing wrong with that, but what's the hurry? Like and just the focus of being a great designer versus being a rich designer. I don't know where that idea came from, but that's very new. Kind of surprising. The idea that you bring up that nobody's patient is really true, and I think one of the things that I benefited from in my career, and I think Work&Co benefited from, was all of us were pretty late in our career before we started a company. So I personally had been working as a full-time digital designer for 16 years before I started my own company. I had been a partner at other agencies. I'd led departments and managed hundreds of people. And that really helped because I got a lot of practice at this job and a lot of practice with a safety net under me. Now, when that net's removed, a lot of those problems that we're facing now, I've faced those problems 100 times before. So like the stress level is just so much lower. It's so much easier to just like solve things. So like taking our time was really good. And I think that the motivation for especially the younger generation of wanting to get there so quick, I have a hard time reconciling with, because a lot of the motivation, especially in certain parts of design, like the Silicon Valley vibe, is just how quick can you get rich, you know? And when I was growing up as a designer, it was about how can you make your mark in the medium of design, or how can you improve something, or how can you make a solution that's particularly beautiful or beneficial. And I think those two things can happen at the same time. Like you can make a great design and also be a good business person, but the priority has really shifted amongst younger people, which is really surprising. And it's not all bad, for sure. Like it is nice for designers to be coming to the table with a bit of business acumen and wanting to be able to talk business, and that's good. But there's more to life than seed investors, you know. It's just you got to think about the bigger picture. Design's a long career. You can be a designer for 40, 50 years if you want to. Like Vignelli was designing until the day that he died. Like you can go. So there's no hurry. Take your time and don't prioritize. Don't over prioritize these silly things versus just having like a stable long career, because it's a marathon. It is. So like you'll get there. It's just slow down and it'll be a lot better, a lot less stress. I wish I had this advice when I was a little bit younger. I would have less gray hair now.
But I think it's not only even the designers or the startups. I mean, even startups, when, for example, they come and they say, hey, we have this amazing idea, we need an app for our product, and they wanted it quick. I mean, they wanted to launch it like really fast in 2 months or so. Everybody's in a rush launching stuff, and it's like, yeah, we want to be first on the market because in 2 years we're gonna sell the company and this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, but that's all led by investors, not led by designers, and like. Investors are looking for a quick return on their investment, and they're using this kind of incubator that is product development and app development in order to get their money back. And that's actually been one of the really lovely things about starting our own company is we're self-funded. We've never taken on investors before. And because of that, we've been able to make really slow decisions. And especially in the beginning, saying no to big projects because they weren't the right projects. That's hard to do. It's hard to like not be taking in money and be saying no to things. If you owe a bank or an investor, you can't really do that. So, and I know that not everyone is in the position to be able to sort of like self-fund a company, but that was one of the things about waiting. Like that was one of the biggest benefits about waiting is we were like grown-ass adults by the time we were doing this. So we could take things a little bit slower, and there's a really big difference between like being an investor and being a designer, and there is some overlap, but you got to be cautious. You hear all these people celebrating that they got $10 million in venture capital. It's like, dude, you're $10 million in debt. It's like, no, you just buried yourself. Like, do you need that much money? No, like I don't know if people really like think about the long term, and sometimes it works, and that's great, and I think that's what people are attracted to, and it's amazing when it works, and we're all affected by that, but um, oh man, a little caution goes a long way, goes a long way.
Yeah, I agree. Um, if coming back to your company, how big is your company actually now? How many employees do you have?
It's about 235 right now, I think.
Oh, that's a really
Yeah.
big agency. Like across all the continents or only US?
Yeah. So the headquarters is New York. I'm in the Portland office, which handles a lot of the West Coast business. We have another big office in Rio de Janeiro, and then we have satellite offices in Sao Paulo, and then one in Eastern Europe. That's mostly a development office. There's some amazing developers there. So, but actually, that's not that big for what we do. It's kind of even medium or small medium. In this field, you need so many different kinds of people to be doing things. So, um, most of the guys that we pitch against are like 2,000 people, 10,000 people, and it's like, no, we're still pretty small, really, for the business that we're in, and that's good, and we're really comfortable with it. I think our goal from the very beginning was to have a nice medium-sized agency, and the advantage of that is you have to be of a certain scale to get invited to sort of the major pitches. So you need to be at least of a certain scale to be able to handle the volume that major businesses need. But we never want to cross the threshold of needing to bring on a B team. And there's a very conscious decision within a lot of agencies to do that, to have sort of an A team, a B team, a C team, and a D team in order to grow and in order to sort of like maximize ROI. But we've since day one said that that's just not the business we're interested in being. So we will grow until there are no longer people we're interested in bringing in. So it's really a hiring led growth. So we find somebody great, we bring them in. And when there's no more great people, then we'll stop growing. That's pretty much it.
um, how is your hiring process? I mean, how do you hire people? What are the requirements when somebody applies to you? Like, what are you looking for in people?
There's a couple of things. I think the first is because we do something so specific, which is just digital product. We don't do any advertising, any marketing, no social, none of that stuff, and we're never going to. We're looking for people who are really interested in that kind of work because it is pretty specific. Like you're making utilities, and I think a lot of us are interested in like even the most basic utilities, like the plumbing, the light switches. Like that's the most interesting. So you first have to kind of self-select to be interested in that world because it's pretty specific. So that's like a big thing. And I think understanding the medium is another big thing. And that's kind of a vague thing to say, but digital is like a language and a world all of its own that's complicated and strange and curious and has weird rules. And some people speak the language and some people don't. It's like speaking a foreign language. Like some people can and some people can't. So I think we really look for those two things as kind of like a baseline. And then within there, you just look for exception, and that can be at any range. You can have an exceptional, really high performing creative director, or you can have an exceptional intern. Like, we'll hire kids straight out of school who have just like incredible student portfolios, or we'll hire people who are the vice president of design at their last job or whatever. But you're just looking for where are you at in your career? Are you ahead of where you're supposed to be? And I think that's what we look for. And then the other thing is like, since we work on really small teams, 2, 3 people design teams, and since we're on teams for a really long time, personality actually is pretty important. So we hire for honesty. We hire for sort of like ego does not work in this kind of environment, especially for product design where you're just throwing out ideas constantly. Like you're gonna have 1,000 ideas trash before you get one good one. And if you can't handle that, then like this isn't the place for you. You just want to like the people that you work with. I mean, we wanted to do two things starting the company. One was to work toward being like the first great digital product design company in terms of the output that we make. But the second is we want to make a job that we liked. Like I got to go to an office every day. I want to like it, and that's really important, super important. And so you want to work with people that you like. So I think it's just like don't be an asshole, basically. Like goes a really long way, and you can smell people out like a mile away. Like if someone's a phony, like you'll know in 1 second, and then it's just like I'm good. So just humble, quiet people that talk with their hands instead of talk with their mouths. That goes a long way here.
So, of course, the company is really big and you have small teams working on different projects and so on. How do you handle like the work, the output, the standards of work? I mean, how do you get the best out of people?
So the company is partner based. And so now there are, I think, 13 partners. There were originally five, and there will continue to be more partners. And that's how we manage the work. So each partner is responsible for their own clients. So I have my clients, my business partners will have their clients, and they're responsible for those individual projects. And then we will look at each other's work and give each other feedback, but each individual partner is responsible for their own work. And I think that is what attributes to the level of quality that we're able to achieve. It's not like there's like one executive creative director that's looking at 100 pieces. I'm looking at two things. Felipe's looking at two things. Jessica's looking at two things. And if you can do that and really pour your time into just one or two things, then those things can be really good, as opposed to sort of like distributing your attention elsewhere. The other thing is the teams that we staff are very, very senior. It's a small group of very senior people. So we're getting to work with high quality people, and that goes a long way too. We don't have a lot of junior staff here, honestly, and that's kind of by choice, because if you're only working with two people, like people who have 10 years experience, 15 years experience, are going to be maybe more practical in those cases. And it's not to say that we don't have junior staff, but they're a much smaller majority of the company than typical. So just focus, really. The answer is just focus. And that's why we continue to have more partners, because if we want to take on more clients, that means that you have to have more partners. Not, I'm going to suddenly split my time in 10 different ways, because I just refuse to do that. I can really only be on two things at a time, or the quality will slip, and that's just not an option. So you either say no to clients, which is usually what happens, or you try to bring on more partners, but that's a very slow thing. I mean, it takes a really long time to find people like that, but we're either promoting people from within or identifying people from elsewhere. And there's always like a list of people that we're looking at, that we're always kind of talking to, and hopefully in time we'll develop this sort of stable of the best in the world, and they'll kind of feel like home here.
One question just popped into my mind. How do you choose clients with whom to work with? I mean, do you have, for example, let's say there is like a really big client with a huge budget, but there's something you don't like maybe about that person. Do you have like maybe some no-goes for projects or companies?
Yeah, actually, it's majority are no-go. Vast majority are no-go. So I'm going to tell you how it really works, and it's gonna be so much less romantic than you might think. So this is how it really works. So there's an email address on our website, which is like newbiz at work.co, right? And if a client has a project, they'll email that, and that goes to all the partners. And if someone is interested in that project, says, "Oh, this is interesting, I want to do this," then they go pitch it and win it and do the project. If nobody is interested in it, then nobody pitches it and does the work. It's like really that simple. And we're much more focused on retaining clients versus bringing on new clients. So, which is also pretty different than a lot of places. So we would much rather work on one client year after year after year, because the work will just continue to get better, than bringing on new clients. So, so like the two clients I am on, I've been working with for 5 years and 3 years. So and that's way better for me. So when we do pitch, like I did two pitches last year, I think that's it. And like from my previous life, I would do two a week. So we don't bring on a whole ton of new clients. We're pretty selective. We're really fortunate to be in that position, and we're much more interested in holding on to the clients that we have for a lot of reasons. It's less stressful. The work is better. You get to know the people. You can do work faster. Exactly, and the relationship really is everything. And then you get to sort of like uh, you get to move in two different ways. One is you get to iterate on whatever has launched and sort of like make tweaks and try stuff, and that's good. And then the other way you get to move is further up the decision-making ladder as you're implementing more business strategy and more product strategy. Um, you can build that trust over time that if you can prove your ideas work through launching something and checking the metrics and seeing that it's working, you can build a trust to be able to try other things that are really about affecting business and affecting what customers are getting and gathering. So you can only really do that with long-term relationships.
There was a quote actually from one of chief marketing officers at Virgin America, and she said that a lot of agencies talk about a collaborative and iterative process, but they truly were. So you even have this part on the website, prototyping over presentations. Can we go more deep into that and explain what exactly it means?
Yeah, that was kind of one of the founding principles of the company about 5 years ago. And it's interesting that methodology is actually starting to kind of spread into the rest of the world. But we don't really make presentations here at all. Sometimes, but not really. Mostly what you'll get with us on the design side, at least, is we just kind of make prototypes immediately. We design in prototypes, and then we'll just hand stuff to people or just play with something, and that'll happen with Virgin America. It was every day. They would sometimes twice a day. We just talk to them, show them what we were thinking about. Everybody was there, from the chief marketing officer Luann, who you're talking about, to the head of operations, the creative director, the technology guys, and we would all just be there talking about the prototypes that we developed at the time, get feedback, implement those changes as we're talking, and then do it again and do it again and do it again every day until you have something that everyone agrees kind of works. And there's a lot of time wasted in developing like a presentation that sets up a narrative and is steering a direction. And I think when you're doing business strategy or product strategy, it is important to set up that context. But I think once the strategy is defined, there's no point in creating some theatrical, like, sort of comical creative director presentation of, like, big hand gestures and wearing a suit and having wacky hair and like some fucking orange watch or something, like, just show the fucking work, and people are smart enough to know if something works or not. Like, if your prototype works, and it works. If your prototype doesn't work and it doesn't, it's really hard to lie with a prototype. It's very easy to lie in PowerPoint. You can bullshit your way through that, and you can sell a bad design in PowerPoint. You cannot sell a bad design in a prototype. It either works or it doesn't. And there's a lot of advantages to prototype. I think it changes the way you design. It forces you to think about time and state and when. And when you're designing in flats, the tendency is to put everything in front of you all at once. But that's not how products work. You have this mechanism, which is time. It says, when do you need stuff? And so if you're developing a prototype from day one, you're designed to become much more modernist and minimalist and functionalist, like, almost instantly. So it has this other beautiful side effect, which is your work becomes simpler as you're prototyping, which is really nice. So it's about a lot of things. It's about efficiency. It's about honesty. It's about modernism in digital, which is something that we're very interested in. And then if at the end of your design major phase, and obviously the phase continues throughout the build, but through the end of conceptual design, if you have a prototype that works, it's very helpful for the developers to be able to understand, to be able to have a tool that communicates well for them. Because obviously, having a great product is like, as a designer, this is hard for me to say, but probably 90% great development. Like design gets you so far, but having something really well built, that's the thing. So I think prototypes are a really good bridge tool for that. And also the other thing about building a prototype is like if you can't build it in a prototype, and these prototype tools allow you to cheat a little bit, you definitely can't build it like in the real world. So it forces you to make really honest choices and really simple choices, and it's just much more appropriate for the medium that we're working in. Like, I'm not trying to tell you a story. I'm trying to build you a tool that your customers want. It's going to move your business. And like, it's just a different skill set. Plus, last thing, and then I'll shut up. It's way more fun. It's so much more fun to build prototypes than to build PowerPoints, you know? Like, it's just a joy to do. And right before we were talking, I was working on a prototype, and it's just really fun. I just like it, and that's a really important part of staying motivated as a designer for a long career. You got to enjoy it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So, how do you build these prototypes and also showcase it to the clients? I mean, do you like have first version of the prototype, then you invite the client and you work together, or how is the process of you working together with the client?
So the process is to try to be as collaborative as possible, and usually the client is actually the bottleneck on that side. We try to be extremely available, but very often the projects that we're working on for a client are like one of many projects that they're working on. So we're always available. We want to basically seem like we are in the same building. Like that's how it should feel. And in terms of like how we actually share the prototypes, there's lots of ways to do that. You know, you can send them an actual app using something like Principal. You can send them a link to a website. You can, you know, a lot of the time what I do is I'll record myself using a prototype and with like a voiceover narration, kind of send that to them, or you just go there and let them kind of play with stuff. The actual tools that we use for prototyping is like everything. Like everyone's in the same boat, which like there really is no silver bullet right now, so everyone just uses everything. Every prototyping methodology has strengths and weaknesses. Nothing's great, perfect yet. So there's civil wars here. Like, I mean, I think like it's 2017 now. The big ones that we're using a lot are Principal, because it's really fast. There's a lot of Framer. Framer's great. Quartz is becoming less and less popular here currently. I don't know why, but I think it's just because of the obtuse nature of the user interface. A lot of people just build stuff directly using something like JavaScript, although things like CoffeeScript are obviously like becoming faster. The absolute best is where you can sit side by side with a developer and really build something natively, and we certainly do a lot of that, especially when we're developing stuff for like TV screens or for apps. But there's a certain lag time in that. So sometimes when it's about coming up with lots of ideas quick, you might use a faster prototyping tool. And then once the ideas are starting to gel, then you might sit side by side with the developer and kind of like make something. And you just do your best to be speaking with the client and at the client, or sending the client stuff as much as possible daily. Sometimes it's weekly. Sometimes that's how clients like prefer to work. But just try to break down the barriers. It just makes things faster. You're going to make mistakes. This is a job of making mistakes. So if people are aware of the mistakes quickly, that's good. If you haven't seen the mistakes until like 6 weeks too late, that's when you're in trouble. So you just try to get all the bad ideas out as quick as possible. That's kind of the game.